So hi, thank you everyone for joining. We are lucky to have Amber Bell, the best in the field, working with us for a few years now, as well as Belinda Allen working with us on Power BI. So we only have the best teachers. So I'm glad that you're taking advantage of that. And we wanted to start new series with training and having, Amber All-Stars on, in our team. We want to help users to start using what they own. And as a partner coming into a lot of takeover accounts, it's aggravating to see that people don't even know sometimes what they own, and sometimes everyone gets too busy and they never get to deploy the things that kind of make GP still a very attractive sellable product on the market. And reporting should never be an issue with GP. There's too many free tools and too many tools that you own that we just wanted to start series that will cover basically use what you already have and especially focus on reporting. And today's session will focus on SQL reports with version GP 2013 R2. Microsoft released over 200 plus SQL reports and 200 plus Excel Live reports. And that was with the goal of basically not enhancing the GP tri-balances, the inside of the GP reports. Instead of enhancing them, they just rewrote them in much better form and in much more accessible way. So this is what we're seeing users are not using because it requires a little bit of technical skill. And our competition on the market usually have functional consultants working in GP, and they may not know how to deploy SQL reports. So we are trying to show you what they are. It's pretty simplistic to deploy them. It's a couple hours to install SQL reports and maybe 15 minutes to deploy them. The whole complexity of that process is security. And I will stop now.
Marlene will go, and then you do this now.
I'm super excited about it. And it's Amber, it's back to you.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, Marlena. And just to kind of follow up with what Marlena said, I've seen the same thing. I've seen people who've gone and bought additional tools and sometimes those are great, but a lot of times you can get a lot out of GP. So we want you to squeeze every last morsel out of using GP to the best of, that it can be used. And so when Marlena and we've known each other now for several years and we've worked together for several years. And when we started talking about what we could do to help people learn how to use GP more, we just literally made a list and both of us said, nobody ever uses this, nobody ever uses that. And one of the main ones that came up was these SQL reports. So again, my name's Amber Bell. As Marlena said, I've worked with GP for a really long time, over 20 years. And I do a lot to really educate people. I feel like education first, and then we'll talk about, if that doesn't do it, like if what you have in GP isn't enough, that's where Marlena can come in and say, here's an add-on or here's some other things we can do. But we want to have your foundation and what you already own to be really, really strong. So that's our goal for today. So what are SQL reports? And sometimes you'll hear them called SQL reports, and sometimes you'll hear them called SSRS reports. So what are SSRS reports and what are SQL reports? In either case, it's reports that are coming from SQL, which is the database that Microsoft lives on. So Microsoft is the front end, but all the data lives on different tables inside of SQL. So what SSRS does is it takes that data and it pushes it through its reporting tool and lets you build or Microsoft built, like Marlena said, hundreds of pre-built reports, and they're customizable. We can add totals and charts and graphs and logos and all kinds of really cool things. It can be based on the flat regular GP tables, but often we base them on what are called SQL views. So we're not going to get into training you today on how to build a SQL view, but for you to understand how powerful these are, I wanted to take a minute and explain what that does. Basically, sometimes in GP, the information that you want is on 5 tables. So even a simple report like I want to run an AP aging report, The information that I need is on the payables vendor master table. It's on the transaction table, and it could be on open, work, historical, depending on what reports I'm running. It's going to be on the general ledger table. So you can think how now that one report I'm growing and growing, and instead of the system every time having to pull from each of those tables, it makes a virtual table, and then that virtual table is called a view, and that view can be used in reports. Microsoft did all that work for you though. They already created those reports. The reports you're going to see today, I have 0 custom reports on my system. I have what is literally out of the box. Depending on the modules you have installed or enabled, the number of reports you see will be smaller or larger. So Marlena said like 200. Mine's a little under 200 because some modules I just might not have turned on my system. And you'll see that in just a second. The nice thing about these reports is that they can be created, and instead of, you know how in GP you run your report, it's great, and then you can't get it anywhere other than just a piece of paper. With this, they can be opened or exported and saved out to Excel, PDF, Microsoft Word, a CSV file. There's lots and lots of options, and today I'm going to show you those options when we do our demo. This is mostly demo. I have slides, but it's a lot of hands-on today, so don't worry about that. So the one thing is, before you can use SSRS or SQL reports, there has to be some setup done. As Marlena said, this is where the technical side kicks in. So there's configuring the report, SSRS, there's local internet settings, there's users and security, there's installing the report builder if you want to change them. But instead of doing that on your own, just put in a support case with DexPro, and then they could just get it all done for you. Because again, that's where the more technical part of it, we're not covering that today. So I'm not going to show you all the setup screens. We're just going to get into actually making it work. As Marlena said, once that behind the scenes stuff, the server end of things are done, inside of GP, I'm going to just open this window. I have a little teeny screenshot here. I'm going to go ahead and open up my GP, and I'm just going to close. I'm closing out my Outlook so it doesn't bug you. So I just did that. Okay. So we're inside of GP, and under administration, I have security to everything. I'm running a test company. If you see data in here on this video, because we're recording today, it's not anything confidential like Amber Bell's secret accounts. You know, it's just literally all test. But inside of the system, we're going to go into reporting tools setup under setup, system and reporting tools setup. And what I want you to see in here is there's a couple different options. Now, Marlena mentioned there's Excel reports as well. I already have those deployed. We're not covering those today, but we have covered those in sessions, and we have things coming up that definitely include those Excel live reports. So that's what we're saying about there's a lot of included reporting tools that you get. So what happens is once all the server stuff's done, then a reporting URL has to be put in here and put in here. And this is all stuff that could be taken care of for you. But what I want you to see is that one that says report manager URL. I'm just going to copy that to my clipboard. I'm just cheating. I'm copying it to my clipboard because you're going to see that in just a second. At the bottom of the screen, literally to get those hundreds of reports enabled or to show up, literally it's a checkbox and then a checkbox and I hit a button. And then like Marlena said, it's 5, per company. If you have lots of companies, it could take a little longer, but per company, 5, 10, something minutes. It's very quick. So we're going to just go ahead and close that out. And let's keep going through the slides. So this was supposed to be my quiz question, but Marlena beat me to it, which is how many SSRS reports are included. As Marlena said, there are hundreds of reports, and that number can grow because you can create your own reports or have those created for you. So even if maybe it's almost there, like you go, oh, this is just close enough to be what we want, but we want a couple changes. If you make a new copy and like save as a new report in Report Builder, you're going to get another report. Now your number is going to grow and grow. Okay. So how can we get to those reports? We do all the deploying. Now we want to run those reports. So what can we do? Well, the first way that I want you to get used to using is using the navigation lists that are built in for those reports. If you are a GP user, now, if you want people to access this data and all they're doing is literally running reports, or they're bugging you, run me a report, run me an aging, run me a list, we can also get them to get this out on a browser. So we're going to do that second. But if you're a regular GP user and you want to run these reports, it's very, very easy to find them and get to them using navigation lists. So let's take a look at how to do that. So inside of my GP, I'm just going to close the other windows I have open. And I can go from administration, I can go down to where it says reporting services reports right here on the sidebar, but I'm going to pick specifically sales. I've noticed lately I keep doing only payables demos and I want to have a mix. So it works for everything. Now you'll see here that on my list, and if you're looking at your screen, or if you come back to this video later, because it'll be up on the website, you can get a download for this or a link for this. You may see that you only see Microsoft Dynamics GP reports, and then you skip down to Smart List reports. That means you now have 2 reporting tools that are not enabled. So that's 2 things that are going to make GP work better for you. So the Excel reports, that's separate, but it's, again, easy to navigate to. But we're going to pull up the reporting services reports right now and just wait. Last night, I recorded a demo for an event, and it made such a delay on my computer. I about started crying every time I had to click anything. Okay, so we've got our reports list up here. Literally to run, I can just double click. It's going to open up my browser. Now I've already logged in for the day. Otherwise it'd pop up and ask for a user ID and password. And you could get all of that during the setup and initial implementation and training. So each user has their own ID. Now this just looks like a little gear, but I can switch this or double click. Some of them are drill-inable depending on what type of report that you run. And some of them have ability to change filters. I picked a random one, and let's show you some other reports. Well, we're going to be doing lots of reports in this demo, so don't worry about that. So getting to them from the navigation list, you can literally just jump. Now we're going to come back to that navigation list at the end because there's a really cool tip. If you find the few reports you really, really like, we're not going to make you have to look for them every single time. I'm going to show you that at the end, so stay tuned. Let's keep on going. Okay. Now you can also access the reports on your browser. So this, you can see on mine, I'm running Chrome. It runs fine on Chrome. It runs on Edge. It runs on everything. You can also run it on mobile as well. So all of that stuff's available. I'm just doing this on my local machine. So let's go ahead and pull up my browser, and I'll show you this screen. So inside of this screen, you'll see what I have access to everything. I'm the administrator, so I have access to everything. This can be very limited. The companies that you see can be limited. The reports that you see can be limited. So if you think, I don't want every user to see everything in the system, that's where when you do the implementation, it's not just flipping the switch and turning it on. It's figuring out who can see what and who can do what with what reports. So that's where you can kind of start thinking of it once you get that enabled. So let's take a look. Now we can see here there's a nice folder, and I'm going to pick on purchasing. We did a sales. Now there's 2 types. There's charts and KPIs. We come back to that in a couple slides, so I'll come back to that. But I can come in here, and I'm going to do, now there's a report in here that doesn't exist in GP. This is actually one I'm really excited about, which is the historical received not invoiced. If any of you do any purchasing and you've ever tried to balance the accrued purchases account to the general ledger, in standard GP, there is no report that tells you what was the accrued purchase at the end of a month ago or 2 months ago. This report will do that. So I don't know, I'll see in my test company, we're going to see now, I'm in 2020, we're going to do 2027 because that's my test date. And we're going to go ahead and say view. So now I've got my report, and I could print this out, and I can verify this against what the balances were in the GL. We're going to do some other stuff with saving and opening, but you can just see how that there's some things in here that may just not be available in regular old GP. That's where Marlena was saying Microsoft has invested their time and money into making these really good, really available. So you can see lots of different reports that are available in here. So let's keep on trucking through here. So you can get to it through the browser. If you get that browser up, I remember I told you I did that. I cheated and did that little copy. If you don't know the address and you get it from that setup or get someone to get it to you, that's the same as the main home page. Then I can drill in and I can get into my test or my companies. My company happens to be called TWO. And then I got to here, and then I would bookmark here. I wouldn't bookmark out there, and just save that in your bookmarks in your browser, wherever you're using. Let's keep on going. Okay. Now, when you run an SSRS report, let's compare this. This is a historical trial balance for payables in SSRS. I'll show you this in the live version as well. But if you compare this to what you would do in a regular payables historical report, it's very similar. So just, you know, if you know how to run these reports, just it's going to look a little different, but it's going to be very, very similar. So let's take a look and see what I'm talking about. I'll say new. I don't need to say modify. So I have my sort. I have my sort. I have my sort for vendors, my sort for documents. I have my option for detail. I have the age as of and what to exclude and all of that. Oh, let's go back over here and check in my browser. Oops, here we go. Click there. And if I go into my purchasing and I go into my historical trial balance, see how now I can do a filter. So I can come in here and say, oops, we don't care. I don't know why it's coming up with my last pass. I did this last time. There we go. Let's do. I'm not going to put a filter in there. It's being funky. I think I have to type in there. So let's just go we'll see what it is. Oh, you've got to type in there. And my thing keeps, this little dots down here is because my password protector is thinking that's a field to log into. So you can type in there if you know the ID. I'm not going to filter on there. I'm just going to do the age as of, and I'll do some filters down on here. If I wanted to type in the ID, I could look in GP and pull up one of my IDs or pull up one of my classes. I do have a payment priority. Let's go ahead and do that just so you can see. I use EFT and EFT. So I only want my EFT vendors. I'm going to go ahead and put that in there. And my age as of, now my test company is 2027. That's why you're going to keep seeing my dates come up, and we're going to go January 31st. And we're going to select them using the GL posting date. And then we can also do other, this is those other filters that you saw in my other GP window, but we're going to hit view report. Okay, so I've got my report. I can hide the filters down at the bottom, and you can see I just have one vendor that had anything open right then. Oh, that was only my EFT vendor since I put that filter in. If I take that filter out, then I'd be able to just go put this back in there. And I'll take that out. You'll see everybody else. And now I'm going to have my AP aging. Now, the reason you can do that report from GP, but what happens in GP if I want to share this with anyone? It's just a hard copy, where in here, we're going to get into this ability to save it. So we're going to come back to this. I can print it. I can come in, print it out. But I'm not going to print it now. We're going to talk about saving it in just a second. Okay. So this is what it looks like to view the report. You can see all that information, and some of the reports have drill-in ability. So depending on the settings, you might start in a summary or in a chart or graph, and then you can drill into more detail. So that can be done in these reports as well. So when you're in an SSRS report, you can save it as different file types. So there's Word, Excel, PowerPoint, PDF, a TIFF file, which is another like graphic file, like almost like an image. There's some other MHTML, there's CSV, there's XML. So you can see it's like a huge list. Things we never had in GP are now available over here. So let's take a look at two options. There's an option to save it as Excel, and then there's an option for CSV. I'm going to show you those two. So let's take a look. Go back over here, and we're going to go save. So first, let's go Excel. It's going to just save this, and then we're going to do it a couple different versions. We're going to also go as a PDF. And let me do this one again. There we go. And then we're going to do a CSV. Oops, I hit the wrong button. So down at the bottom, you'll see that now I have 3 different versions. I'm going to just move this little guy out of the way. Move you over there. Okay. So now I have a CSV, an Excel, and a PDF. So let's open up the PDF. So now I've got my PDF, and I could share that. And if you look at this and you go, oh, I don't like the formatting, do you know what we can do? It can be modified. You want to put a logo, you want to change the formatting, you want to change the column names. Those are very easy things to do. So just let DexPro know and say, you know what, this is close, but I want it to look like this. And those are things that can be done. We're starting with the base. They tried to pick up what GP had and just put it over here into the reports. Let's go back over here. I'm going to open up Excel. So, oh, that's my old one. So this is what it looks like in Excel. Now, one thing you're going to notice is that in this version, it's taking that graphic report where I have several lines, and it just is basically just stamping that right into Excel. But this wouldn't be a great version to use for formulas. And if you are doing this all the time and you're exporting, and then you do 18 other steps, do you know what Marlena's going to say? Show us those 18 other steps and let's give you that final report. Because if you're doing 18 other steps, we can probably automate that for you with a separate custom report. So don't think, oh, I'm going to do an export and then I'm going to do 18 steps. Say, I'm going to show DexPro, I'm going to show them, and then we're going to make it better. So even though we can get to more raw data, don't make it worse for yourself by always opening up. This is what it looks like in raw data. I did one earlier. But if you're taking this and then you're doing, oh, and we do this formula and we do this formula, that's a good time to say, hey, can you make this better? Because it takes us every time. I've had customers that go, oh, when we do this, we export it, and then 4 people do these 15 different steps and it takes 2 days. That's stuff we want to get around. So use what you have, but then improve on it by optimizing it and making it more efficient. That's our goal. Okay. So we talked about save as Excel. Now we talked about save as a CSV. So you can open it up as Excel, you can open up as PDF, you can open it up as all those file types. When you're first diving in, when it gets installed, try it out and see which one you like the best. When you're trying to answer a question, when you're going into your meeting, sometimes it might be better to be this version file, sometimes it might be better to be another. So you're in inquiry only mode, you're not messing with the data. So take a minute, explore, and find what works best for you. And again, if the formatting isn't quite there, print it out, take a pen, mark it up, scan it, send it over, ask for a quote on getting that to be perfect for you. Okay. Now, inside of SQL reports, you're going to see things that are charts, graphs, and KPIs. KPI stands for key performance indicators. So those are all built in the old versions of GP. They started to put these graphs and charts on the homepage, and everybody was like, woohoo, there's charts and graphs. And then I'd work with clients and they'd say, can you change this? Can you change the filter? Can you change this? Can you change that? So what Microsoft did was they started with a base of charts and graphs, but those again are built on a tool that we can customize and format for you. Now, if you really love charts and you really love KPIs, don't hang up. We're going to talk about another tool that works along with GP that can do charts and graphs as well. So we've got the SQL reports, they work along with GP, and we've got the Excel reports. We've got lots of ways to get the data out. So let's take a look at how we can see those KPIs and charts. I'm going to show you a cool way to get to them as well. So let's go back into our browser and let's go back to here, and we'll pull up, let's do, we'll do inventory just for why not, KPIs. Okay, so you can see here there's some different, there's not that many great ones. We'll go back to sales or purchasing. We'll see if some other better ones. Purchasing, there's a few more in here, so it's a little more exciting. Okay, so there's some built in, and you can see there's a pie chart in here, there's total requisitions per month, top items by purchasing, payable summary. Let's take a look at the top vendors by year to date pie chart. Now, bear in mind, I'm in my wacky test company, so it's not super exciting, but you can see here that I've got my chart pie graph, and we can see who I've only spent $600 in the year that it's pulling, but I can adjust and I can see that, and I can click into here and I can even see more information. That's what I meant about drilling in. So in those charts and KPIs, take a look at them. Like, let's take a look at another one, total payables by month. Now, right now, you can see I'm just got 0 because that's because it's looking at 3/30/21. Let's make this 27 and let's view report. And now you can see it says million something over there. Let's make it bigger because I made it kind of tiny earlier and make it even bigger. Okay, so you can see $2 million in there, and I can switch to different types as well. I can switch this and make it a column report. You can kind of play around with and see, whoa, December 26th, I spent millions of dollars and haven't since then. So you can kind of play around and see which version you like. But again, those are all built in, but they're just the base to give you, you know, a lot of really good starting points. And with real data, it actually really makes sense. Mine is so funky with the test data, so don't worry about that. Okay, let's take a look. Okay. Now, I mentioned earlier, one of my favorite ways to get to these reports is to use what's called My Reports. If you haven't heard of, or if you don't use My Reports, they can be used for all kinds of reports in GP, not just SQL reports. The reason that I like these is if you're like me, sometimes you run a great report. It helps you. You can close your books. You can figure out the answer. And then trying to find that report again is like a needle in the haystack. So we're going to go back into GP. And we're going to go in. I'm not going to hit My Reports because that's where I'll run them. So we're going to go into the setup for this. Okay. So let's say that I have a regular AP report. I can do that. So let's say my AP report is trial balance. And I'm going to do this, and I've got my current detailed report. And, oh, I already added that one, so we'll make a new one. Let's go. I'll just call AP test. So in here, I've got my report. I can click My Reports. And then I just usually say GP report, AP trial balance, current, and I can put a nice long name. Now, what that allows me to do is to get to that report by either clicking here, or I can be on my home page if I have the My Reports box available on my home page and I can get to it. But you'll see on my home page, look at this. I have all kinds of different reports. I have Excel reports, SQL reports, GP reports, and down here, look, I have an SSRS report. So that means that I went to my purchasing. I went to my reporting services reports, and it won't say SQL reports, and it'll say reporting services. So don't get off this call, and even if we get it installed, you won't see that word SQL. It just calls it reporting services. And I can pick the report, and I can take this and go to add to right here at the very tip top. And I'm going to go, and I can either do SQL, and I put that at the beginning because I'm just going to call this, oops, I'm going to call this AP cash requirements. I put what type it is because, like Marlena said, there's so many ways to get data out that when I'm using my Reports feature, I want you to just look at it and I want to know what kind of report it's going to run. So if I just look at this and I can see, and now I ran out of room because I've been doing a lot of different ones. If I hit more, it actually opens my own navigation list custom to my user ID that are all of the reports that I've added. So it's a real easy way to modify or to get to these reports. So if I come in here and there's a report that I don't need, you can kind of see I've got all kinds of ones in here. I can just check a box and remove them, and I can remove the SQL ones as well if needed. Okay. So next, now in the newer versions of GP, they've added the option to add SQL reports to your master records. So let's take a look at what I mean. So if I come into GP and I come into a customer, a vendor, an item, a GL account, lots of different windows. Let's get over here. And let's just go into financial, and I'll show you the one I set up earlier. If I pull up the master record, and that's under cards. Master records are all the cards in GP. And we're going to come into here, and I'm just going to pull up one of my accounts. Let's do, we'll see if I can find something. Oh, it's fine. I'll pick that one. It doesn't matter. I'm going to go to available and you can come in. Now, these are not necessarily pre-filtered reports, but it's a quick way to get you online to the SQL report that you can then modify or run. So we're going to come in and you'll see in here what we have, and we can adjust the accounts that it's selecting. We can drop those down, so we can pick the dates, and we can run a report. So you can get those right off of those master records, and we can kind of work with you and get those things set up if needed. But just so you see now, how am I getting to them? I can go to the browser. I can go to my home page if I made them into my reports. I can go to the navigation list. So lots of ways to get to them. Next thing we're going to do is, in the newest versions of GP, they added an option under Administration Setup System Preferences to turn off Business Analyzer. Now, what is Business Analyzer? Business Analyzer is a tool that can run those SQL reports outside of GP, so it can run charts and graphs and things outside of GP, but it can also just be charts and graphs on your home page or charts and graphs on navigation lists. Let me show you what I'm talking about. So if I go into GP and I go onto my home page, and it'll take a second, and you can see here now I have my charts and graphs here on my home page, and I can scroll through. And what is cool about these, so let's just pick one that has stuff, is I can expand this out. You can see a big version of this. And if I mouse over just right, you can see that I can even go in here and edit the report, copy the image, change the date. So oh, this doesn't have a date. I picked one without a date perimeter. Of course I did. But I can come in and I can modify or change the information that's coming in. So let's go ahead and take a look and see if I can find one that's good. Okay, so we're going to change this to 2027. Oh, I did it wrong. Okay, there we go. So you can see here what it does is that now it's going to update with more accurate information, even though it's really not accurate because it's a test company. But again, I can get that information. And then what's kind of cool about this is that I could just take this and copy the image. And in something like my PowerPoint or in my Microsoft Word document, let's just pull up Word, I can paste this. So if I have to have a meeting and you get these reports exactly the way you want them, then you can include these charts and graphs in your report as well. So that's a really cool thing. Now, the reason that I put this in with that part about disabling it, so there's the pasted out. Just wanted to show you. Okay. The reason I mention this is I recommend unchecking these boxes. Our Business Analyzer report's pretty cool. Yes, they can be, and I'll show you these in just a second. But the reason I recommend turning them off is that when you first launch GP, it's trying to connect to the report server. When you open up the navigation list, it's connecting to the report server. So it slows things down. What I prefer is having it turned off, and then the users that want this turned on can enable it on their homepage. And the navigation lists that you want to use Business Analyzer, you can turn it on. But in general, it's going to just make things faster and smoother because most people want just the data as fast as possible, and running and generating a report makes it a little slower. And so they gave you that option to just turn that off. Okay. So as I mentioned, we talked about now Business Analyzer, yeah, it can be on your homepage. It can also be accessed in navigation lists. So let's take a look at one that I've enabled. So we're going to go into GP. I'm going to go into purchasing. And I'm going to pull a navigation list that doesn't include a Business Analyzer report. So this is just going to run. And this is just going to be a flat list. If you've never used navigation lists, we've covered this in some of our other events, and we'll have some more coming up. But you can just see a quick list. I can put them on hold. I can see their status. I can create a payment just for the one I select. All of that's great. But here's where you can do a navigation list. So now I'm going to come in here, and we're going to select a couple different vendors and see what happens. And it may, like I said, it takes a little minute longer, but if it's going to answer questions for you, it's worth letting it run because it's, like I said, connecting to the server. So we talked about, just going to come over here. We talked about that it can be turned off. It can be assigned to the master record. And now we're going to see it on the navigation list. So you're going to see that I can select one or more customers, one or more vendors, one or more accounts, and run those SQL reporting services, charts and graphs and KPI kind of reports there. So let's take a look and see if it finished up. And there we go. Now, right now, it's just showing Ace Travel. If I pick a different vendor and we could get this to refresh, it'll come up and show you. But let's go ahead and select a couple. We're going to just sort this. And I'm going to pick, oh, see, I refreshed now. I'm going to pick a couple of these. I'm going to go with this one and this one and this one. We're just going to pick 3. Okay. Now, over here, what I can do is I can come in and I can change my date. Let's change the date and see. And we're going to say 3:30 again. My thing keeps defaulting to my real date. Let's change it to the date of the test company. Let that run. Hopefully get it to go. And I promise I got it working. I just kept hitting the wrong buttons earlier. So I did take a screenshot of what it does end up looking like. See if it's going to do it. Oh, there we go. So now you can see here that I've got my nice little chart and graph. But what I can also do is I can also say view report and just jump to the browser because that's teeny. Why do you want to look at it so tiny? I can come up and I can see right in here that report there. And I can change the dates around and I can do all kinds of things with that report. So do you see how now we're going to use, sometimes leaving it on the business analyzer on the navigation list is a good idea. If there's things like this that you want for meetings and for things you're going to do with the bank or whatever, you can pull that kind of information up. Okay. You can have this on the home page. So on our home page, we can click, we got couple more slides, and I know we're going to tell you some upcoming training and let you know about other things we can do with this. So on our home page, let's go back over here. And I just want to show you a couple things. My little things thinking. Now, again, like I said, you may decide you don't need this up, and I would just run them all through the browser or through, another way, but this is available, and I wanted you guys to get to see what it looks like when it's on your home page. So again, we can do this. Now, what I did for this, I didn't show you guys how to customize the ones that show, but in our navigation list, we can say which reports we're assigning. Kind of like we just did on the master record, we can insert different reports, and I'll show you guys that in just a second. So let's go back over here and go to customize this page. Now, anywhere that we can get to those reports, we're going to see this option. Let's just click this and it'll kind of cover. My mouse is missing. I hate when you can't see it. There it is. I have 2 screens and so it gets a little lost. Click this. And this is where all of those reports that are in that KPI chart section are showing. And some of those other reports as well. So I can come in and throw those reports in by hitting insert. And now I've got another report that lists, and I can sort those around as well. So those can be added to your navigation list. It can be added to your home page. You can get to them off the browser. So now we've got several ways you can get to it. You do not need GP up and running for these to be live data. If you open it in the browser, it's going to be live data. A user does not even need to be set up in GP to run these reports. So again, if they are literally just, what's this? They're asking you queries all the time. We can get them access in the browser so they're not taking up a GP license to get into there. And Marlena can tell you more about if there's any other rules with that. But as far as like your normal full-fledged GP users, it does not eat those up. It's running separate. Okay, I've got 2 more slides, and then Marlena, we've got it. We'll have about 15 minutes or so, give or take, for questions. Okay, so we talked about it on the home page. Now, there are several reporting options for GP, and there's sometimes confusion like which one should I use? Is one better than the other? And the truth is, some of them are good in some situations and some are better in other situations. And we want you to be able to get to all of them, to know what they all do, and then make the best decision for that specific thing you're trying to accomplish. So I didn't put on here the standard GP reports. You guys know you can run those. You know how to do those. You should. If you don't know how to run those reports, that's an easy thing to cover in a quick training. But let's talk about the 4 that I mentioned here. So first is Smart List, and we'll include in that designer and builder. People love Smart List. I love Smart List. Marlena knows I love Smart List. I have many times I will set up new Smart Lists for people to do all kinds of things. And the reason I love it is that it's very easy to run and modify, but there are some downsides. It's not formatted unless you do some extra stuff in Excel. Even if you automate that, you're still dealing with the data has to generate first formatted with no totals. And even if you automate formatting it out in Excel, it's slower, especially if we're talking about, we have customers that I've worked with that have thousands, hundreds, thousands, bajillions of rows. And when you get into that large data set, it has to first load in Smart List, then it has to export to whatever tool you're using to consolidate it, mostly Excel. So that can make it slower. But any quick, I love Smart List, it's not going anywhere. You want to get better and stronger at Smart List. Today we talked about SSRS or SQL reports. What are the pros? It's fast. When it's pulling the data, it's not running it through GP and then out to the report. It's just pulling direct onto the report. You can also do formatting. So I forgot to put that in there. We can do totals, we can do formatting, we can do logos, we can do all kinds of things to make it beautiful. It can also be saved to Excel and PDF much easier than a standard GP report. One thing though is that for modifying, you're going to need to learn SSRS report builder. So sometimes the modification is better to have that be a support call instead of someone trying to figure that out if they're not going to learn that report tool. Excel reports, they're included with GP. They're easy to format. And by Excel reports, I mean those live data feed reports. So those published live data feeds. And it's going to be faster return of data. So if you're running something as a Smart List every time, we want to, in my mind, I think of you coming out of that all the time export. And let's see if we can either replace that with a live Excel report, or if that doesn't make sense, and sometimes it doesn't because we don't want that live feed. We want it to be a point in time. Get you into SSRS reports, because again, you're going to have formatting, you're going to have good security, you're going to have that mobile access. And then the last little quadrant in there is Power BI. Now, if you've not heard of Power BI is a Microsoft product that does all kinds of reports. It does, they're very mobile, they can have drill-in ability, they have all kinds of things. So a lot of the things I just told you with SQL reports, it's similar in some ways, but the interface for learning and building that, you might go, could I ever learn that? So here, drum roll, this is a little extra, is that we have a Power BI class coming up through DexPro. So DexPro, like Marlena mentioned at the beginning, she's teamed with me to do a lot of the GP training, but she's brought in Belinda Allen, who's a Microsoft MVP. I love Belinda Allen. She's a great trainer, and she is doing a hands-on introduction to Power BI class. So if right now you're thinking, I like SQL reports, and no matter what, get those things enabled, because they're going to help you with trial balances, things like that, that you don't want to reinvent the wheel. But if you want to take it up and you go, my real big need is I want to get into graphic reports and pull in other data and do all kinds of things, you want to take a look at Power BI. So we already have some, I think, pre-recorded things. Marlena can tell you more about that. So Marlena, why don't you tell them a little bit about what's on the website and what's coming up?
Great. So in summary, and we're going to allow you to ask questions in about a couple minutes, but yes, we have upcoming events and also available previous trainings, so you can start from the very beginning with Power BI. We also have some 4-hour-long courses for both Power BI as well as GP upcoming on our website, so feel free to check our links. But I want to go back to for a moment to what we covered today. And just if you're existing DEX Pro client, there's pretty solid chance that if we did your upgrade, you have SQL reports. All you may be missing is security to it. Maybe that's where it stopped, but we consider this best practice. Second, if you are, if your existing partners tells you that you need to buy new GP licenses because you have few users that need, maybe log into GP to just access reports, that's when you can save up on spending money on license. Think of it that I can give this end user a link, web link, browser link to this specific one report. And we actually have a client who has whole sales team with very specific custom link to their sales reports and saving bunch of money on licensing for GP. And then also we have a client who has person that spends 8 hours a week creating manual dashboard KPI reports. If you think of it, we can do it in 2 different tools here using either dashboards in Excel or SQL reports. So that's pretty big deal when it comes to savings. And can you go back to the slide before? I just want to point one thing.
Yeah.
When you're looking at this, it's most people use SmartList to export to Excel. Why not to just use Excel like Amber said? It's there, it's the same data. Those are rewritten reports that you can just access. If you think, should I use this or SQL? SQL allows you to enter, do I want to enter parameters to see what data I want, and it gives you totals. So it's true reporting tool instead of just a data dump. So those are 2 different ways of looking at it. And if you're tired of looking at sort of ugly GP reports, the ones that everyone knows or almost everyone, that's more enhanced version and it's easier to customize, export and use. So that's all I have. And then we can start maybe with some questions. If anyone have any questions, please let us know. Haley will allow you to speak.
Okay, we have Byron.
Hi, Amber. Thank you for the presentation. I really like the SSRS SQL reports deal. This PowerPoint presentation, is that something that you can make available to everybody, or?
Yeah, usually what we do is after class, I forward it to Haley and then she sends it out to attendees.
Okay, and if we like more personalized training on this tool,
yeah,
that's available too, right?
100%. We opened this event up to not just existing DEX Pro clients, but just other people who are curious what this was for. But we offer, I do a lot of trainings with DEX Pro with clients just to get them up and running on all kinds of reporting tools. And we have other people as well if you want to get into doing customizations and things as well.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, definitely. Byron asked the best questions. If you want to, he said he liked it and he'd like to learn more. Those are the 2 best kinds of questions.
Made my day right there. So yeah.
I'm just gonna rest now. Yeah. No, I think while we're waiting, I'm watching the chat. So Haley will see if anybody raises their hand or if anybody is. Haley, do we have anybody else raising their hand?
Not at the moment.
Okay.
No,
perfect.
but everyone is able to unmute if they'd like to start their video. So
Perfect.
everyone
Okay,
feel
let's
free.
give it a second. Maybe someone wants to speak and we don't let them.
Yeah. Give them a minute.
Can you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, this is Carlos. I was really impressed with your RBNI report. What was the first thing you mentioned? Can I access that report directly from my reports that I have on GP, or do I have to find that path that you showed to be able to access it through my?
There is a couple ways that you can access the report. So you can either go out to the browser or inside of GP. You can't get it from the reports. Like if I was in GP, if you can see my screen here.
Yes.
It's not going to come up over in this section at all. None of those reports are going to come up over here, but they're going to come up here where it says reporting services reports. and you can pull up the reports there anytime, and you don't have to close out GP to get to them. Does that answer your question?
Excuse me, can you just repeat the last part? I was trying to open up your screen and I was not able to see where
Okay.
you were showing me. But I'm in reporting services report. So then you said go where?
And then if you want to just run any of the reports, you literally just double click them. That's the easiest thing to do.
Okay, but here I will find that RBNI report that will help me with the reconciliation.
Let me see.
The first one that you mentioned when we started the presentation.
Yeah, let's go back here and see what I did. So we did.
It's a report that it's not obtainable through GP only.
Oh,
through-
the one I know which one you're talking about. I know which one you're talking about. Way back at the beginning. So the one I was talking about, I'll show you how I can get it from GP and I can show you outside. It's going to be under reporting services, and we're going to go. Sorry, they're mowing outside my house. Of course they are, because I'm on a call. I just typed in the word received.
Yeah,
And see where it says historical received, not invoiced.
correct.
That's the one I want to run. I'm going to double click it. And then did it double click on your machine? And did it open up like this?
Let me follow you. I'll go here to receive. And then that is giving me as result. Were you in financial or in administration? They were
I was in purchasing.
purchasing. Okay.
I was under.
All right. Let me go back to reporting services report here. I go to receive.
Yeah, so I'm under purchasing and reporting services.
Oh, now I have it here. It says historical receipt, not invoice.
Perfect.
And I have a one that says new historical receipt, not invoice below that. But
Okay.
anyway,
So just the one that I just typed in the word received, and it filtered to just these three. And I picked the historical received, not invoice. That's the one I want to run.
perfect. Now you say you double click on it.
Double
and
click it, it'll open up in your browser. And then you,
Provided that you have the security, yes.
yeah, if you don't have security, then that's where we can get it fixed for you.
Okay. Okay. Well, yeah, it's not coming up, but I understand what.
Okay, and that's a
And-
quick thing you can, oh, sorry, go ahead, Marlena.
No, we see that a lot too, that sometimes clients have the reporting deployed, but the security is not done too. So that's, think of that. It's not a big consulting engagement to really set this up completely. So
Yes.
even from installation points to just security, so it's just basically you own those. We just need to help you get you to them.
Perfect.
So then I did get a direct question from Brenda. Brenda has even asked, can you show how the reports on SSRS can be rearranged in the folders? Can one make a new folder that only has the reports most frequently used? So Brenda, if you can see my screen, when I have the reports up, there's these three little dots, and I can come into here and I can move it, which I'm not going to do that, but I could, but I could also add it to favorites. So if I add it to favorites, then if I click up at the top, you'll see there's my favorite report. I can go back to browse. I can come in, pick back my main company. I'll pick a report and I'll pick this. I clicked it and I have to wait for just a second, add to favorites. I can say move, and then I could move it to another main folder. But if I want to do a folder that I use most often, then I would just move it into my own personal favorites. If you start moving them around in other folders, then you're going to mess it up for other people. I'm going to try one more quick thing, which, oh, here, manage folder. Yeah, okay, yeah, I could rename it and all that. I'm not going to do that. Okay, so does that, Brenda, does that answer your question that you can just click that? You can move them around, but you can also just use that favorites. That's going to probably answer that question, hopefully. See if she unmutes or gives me a thumbs up. Oh, perfect. So she said, yes, thank you. Okay. So yeah, I really like, basically with this, I like that you can see them very easily. And again, it's going to be limited to your security. And like Marlena said, if you run into that you can't get to a report or you're not able to run those reports, that's going to be a support call, and it's something that is easy to remedy. And then when you get new users, we'll want to make sure you have that as your checklist for when new users get set up in GP. We want to give them access to Excel reports and access to SQL reports. One thing to note, oh, go ahead.
Oh, go ahead.
I was going to say, one thing to note is that the security for SQL reports, Excel reports, Power BI reports, any of those, do not look at your GP security. The reason they don't is that, like Marlena said, you don't need GP up and running. You can have a bunch of users that have no access. I had another message from C. Garduno, which said, how can I set up the browser access? Who knows my path to access this site? So the way that I found my browser link was I went into here. And again, it's a secured site, so some random weirdos can't get into your data. But if you come into administration setup and we go to reporting tools setup, if you take the one that says report manager URL and you copy that, or have someone, if you don't have security to that, tell them to go into that window, get you that URL. That's going to get you to the main page. I'm going to copy this again, and I'm going to go back into just a regular browser, and I'll give another tab.
When we deploy those reports, we supply end users with those paths. Now, another way is if you access those reports from inside of GP, then you will also find that path that way because it will open in the browser. So there
it's going to open up direct into the browser as well. What I wanted was when I was coming from GP, I wasn't getting to that screen that had those nice little folders. So even though I can get them through here, I like that option of having the full just folder and just doing the whole thing over here. From here, it will open. I'll just open up this one. But it's opening to the report server versus the place where I'm at, which is like a browser. It does it a little bit different. So from here, if I want to get back to the one that has all the reports, I can't just jump back. Like this doesn't really do it. It goes to a wonky window thing. So that's why I had to get to that.
Off, yeah.
It goes to that, which isn't very pretty. It works just the same, but I like the pretty one version better.
Bottom line, once whoever deploys those reports for you should be supplying that path to you, and you can then save it as a favorite on your whatever browser you choose to use.
On the browser. So yeah, so there's lots of different ways to get into there. Big thing is that if you forget 100%, again, you can always access them through GP first if you need to, and save them from there. Okay. And she wrote, great, thank you. So it sounds like somebody else is going to ask a question. Go ahead.
I'm afraid to do anything in this thing.
Don't be afraid. Do you have a question? I don't know if you meant to unmute, but go ahead and ask your question if you want. I think they didn't mean to unmute. I think they were just, but if they want to unmute, they're welcome to.
Okay, so no more questions?
Looks like I don't have any more in the chat for me. So unless they came direct to you or to Haley.
Thanks very much.
So thank you for a great presentation, Amber. And for everyone who's still on the call, please keep in mind that to have those reports completely available, deployed, and accessible to end users, it's not a big consulting engagement. Depending if they are installed, it may be just, you know, configuring security. And then depending on how complex your security is, do you have 200 users or 2? That's really the only time that, you know, it will take to configure.
Yeah. No, and it's I hope you guys oh, go ahead.
Possible. Sorry for the interruption.
Go ahead.
I was trying to run right now the SSRS report for the RBNI that you mentioned, and it comes up and it's beautiful. But problem is that the numbers that it's bringing up are different from what I got from the report that I was getting from GP, from the normal reporting. Is there any way that I can see what is the source, what tables, or what, I don't know how you call them, but probably it's
Like the
tables.
source of it, yeah. I believe that the table, it's going to use the same table, but what it's doing, the one that if you ran the one that I was talking about, that is the received not invoiced. It's trying to do a historical. The one that's in GP, even if you put in a filter for dates, it is not truly historical, because GP is not smart enough in the tables that it uses to go back in time. This is the only way to get a historical version. You can't compare it to the GP one. The GP one, so if you ran it as of today, it should be close to being the same, but if it's not, there could be some wacky records that are in one and not the other, and that could be something that we could look at offline.
Is this something like, I started doing some research yesterday, and I was comparing some AP aging and AR aging with reports from SQL or SQL to the GP reports. And even though all my transactions that I've been reporting from my regular GP report were considered in the SQL report, in the SSRS report, the SSRS report brings in additional information like payments on the AP report that we don't have on the other one.
Okay.
The result is the same, but it differs because it has different elements in the report. So should I be just confident that the one that comes from SQL is correct?
Well,
the additional information that it's bringing up.
Marlene, want to answer that?
Yes, so yes, you should be confident that the SQL report has correct data. We are not aware of any, the existing reports that would not be providing, accurate information. It could be your also quality of your data, and it could be that you're not comparing apples to apples when you run those reports. So for those reasons, yes, you can have confidence in those reports. They are Microsoft designed reports for users, GP users specifically. If you see an issue or question something, then, it would be good to arrange, engage the support and ask why you're not. Yeah.
We'll consider that. Thanks very much.
You're welcome. Yeah. And like I was mentioning, there are maybe some reports that are available here because they've added some new reports here that are not available in regular GP. So especially if there's any historical report, make sure that if you're comparing a historical report, that you're comparing it to a historical report. If you do just filter by date anywhere in GP, even outside of SSRS, if you just try to do a date filter and kind of make a historical report, that's not truly a real historical report. So that's why, especially with this, the RNI, the received not invoiced report that Carlos is talking about, I think it's Carlos, that report, since it doesn't exist in GP, you have to just, I would go through and just double check, the actual, like spot check the vendors, make sure it makes sense, and see which ones are different. And then you might be able to drill back to what the issue was, but it is a different report than the one you're seeing in GP, and that's why the data is different.
Perfect. Thank you.
Okay, perfect. Do we have any questions, or are we good?
No questions in my inbox.
Okay, perfect. And we got a great thank you and a thank you again. So that's
I got one of those too. Yep.
Well, great. I hope that really, kind of gave you a perspective that you own this today. You have all of those reports. You have all those KPIs. It's just a matter of getting you to be able to access them. And we wanted to show you the stuff you own. And we're going to continue with next session, showing you what you own and should be using. And please check your spam folder. We're sending you invitations to our sessions. I would say often, and so, but we see that a lot of that is going to spam folders. So please check it. And we have Dexpro newsletter starting first week of April. And so please, make sure you check your spam folder, and all the training and free sessions, and as well as training sessions offered by Amber will be included in that newsletter.
Perfect. Well, thank you, Marlena, and thank you, everybody. This has been it was a fun one for me to put together, because I really am amazed, like Marlena said, how many people don't realize they have this, and you show them and they're blown away. And I'm thinking of more and more people that I'm like, oh, I wish I would have showed that to them years ago. And now that it's out and available, it makes things a lot easier for working with GP. So thank you guys.
Thank you, everyone, and let us know if we can assist.
Yep.
Thank you.
And Haley, just remind me, I'll send you the slides.
All right, sounds good.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.